for the Department of Justice Settlement Agreement and Compensatory Education. If you require Spanish recording, interpretation, we're going to have our interpreter come on now and indicate what you do next. Magda?
Muy buenas noches. La Oficina Internacional ha asignado 2 intérpretes para interpretar de inglés a español esta noche. Para los miembros de la audiencia que deseen escuchar la presentación en español, por favor, presione el botón de interpretación en la parte inferior de su pantalla y seleccione español. Verá la presentación, pero el audio será en español. También puede silenciar el audio original inglés para escuchar la presentación al 100% en español. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. We are going to have an hour-long presentation with you tonight. You may put questions in the chat feature this evening. If they are general questions, we will be able to answer them perhaps this evening or through a frequently asked question document. If the questions are more personal in nature, directly related to your individual child, there will be contact information at the end of this presentation where you can reach out to Mr. Blazik, myself, or Troy Keller to get additional support and help with your personalized question. Good evening. I'm Linda Chambers, Director of Special Education, and we welcome you tonight to the Parent Information Session regarding the Department of Justice Settlement Agreement and Compensatory Education.
And good evening. I'm Troy Keller, your other Director of Special Education. Beginning in October of 2020, Frederick County Public Schools cooperated with an investigation led by the United States Department of Justice regarding restraint and seclusion practices, which resulted in a settlement agreement in December of 2021 last year.
You were invited this evening for us to be able to clarify your compensatory service offer as parents whose children were affected by the district's restraint and seclusion practices. We will also outline the complaint process and answer questions that you may have. Tonight's presentation is being recorded and it will be posted on fcps.org, as well as a set of frequently asked questions from tonight's webinar. Additionally, we will send a link of the recording and the FAQ document via email within 3 school days of today's presentation.
So as a result of the DOJ settlement agreement, one of our key changes we implemented is seclusion is no longer a practice utilized in FCPS. It is prohibited on all FCPS properties. So as of December 10th, 2021, we have removed all locking mechanisms from seclusion rooms. No students will be placed in former seclusion rooms for any behavioral or disciplinary purposes. Additionally, physical restraint may not be used except in an emergency situation in which physical restraint is necessary to protect a student or other person from imminent, serious physical harm after other less intrusive, non-physical interventions have failed or been determined inappropriate by a trained individual.
As a district here in Frederick County Public Schools, we are committed to systemic change for the betterment of our students. The safety and well-being of our students and staff is our highest priority to the school system as a result of the outcomes from the settlement agreement. With that, I would like to introduce to you our supervisor of behavior analysts, Mr. Matthew Blazik. Matt comes to FCPS with 8 years of experience as a board certified behavior analyst, as well as 8 years of classroom teaching experience, where he has worked with children from the ages of 2 to 21. His experiences encompass a variety of settings and levels, non-public, secondary, special education, public-private partnerships, private school, and alternative public schools, as well as private therapy services for families in diverse settings in California, Florida, and Maryland. While teaching in these settings, he was an advocate for student choice that promoted their academic, emotional, and social development and success. Upon coming to Maryland in 2016, Matt worked in Charles County Public Schools for 4 years as the lead behavior specialist, with a focus on training staff and effective, non-restrictive interventions for challenging behaviors. He continued this work in Washington County in their Title I schools before joining Frederick County Public Schools. His expertise and passion for student-centered supports that are safe, effective, and inclusive will be a great benefit to the students, staff, and our community here in Frederick County. And I'm going to turn it over to Matt. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And I want to thank Linda and Troy for this overview that they gave and that introduction. And I also ask that if I miss something while I'm making this presentation, that they interject and make sure that we cover everything that we want to share with you tonight. So we're going to start with some key changes that FCPS has made, as well as a few that are in progress that will have an impact on our practices that are going to benefit your students. Okay. You've already heard about one of the changes that has happened, which is me, the hiring of supervisor of behavior analysts. I'm a full-time board certified behavior analyst. In a moment, we'll provide a little more information about what that means and some of the other acronyms that we use in this, because you see BCBA and BCABA showing up. My key responsibilities are to supervise some additional new staff, BCABAs and BCBAs, to hold school level meetings at least once each semester with administrators, our BCBAs, and others who have used physical restraint, write reports on the number of restraints and how effectively each school has used their behavior interventions, including FBAs and BIPs, which will be explained in a moment. Resolve problems in coordination with superintendent, the directors that we have on this call of special education, and relevant school administrators, as well as report all this information to the Department of Education as part of our civil rights data collection. A final component that we'll discuss in more detail as well is that I investigate any complaints regarding physical restraint or exclusion that happen in FCPS. One final thing not included on that slide is that there will be significant training updates for FCPS staff, and we will cover what those look like as well. So a few key terms that I'm probably going to just use as acronyms as we continue this presentation. We see board certified assistant behavior analyst is a person who has been certified by an organization like the Behavior Analyst Certification Board at the undergraduate level. These staff have specialized training to work with challenging behaviors and create behavior change, and they have at least a bachelor's degree while they work with that certification. A board certified behavior analyst is a person who has been certified by an organization like the Behavior Analyst Certification Board at the graduate level. Staff that have this certification have at least a master's degree, and some may even have a doctoral degree. Oh, I went too fast. Applied behavior analysis. That is a science based on the use of learning principles to improve lives. And we'll see how this will impact your students at FCPS in a moment. We also have functional behavior assessments, or FBAs, a process used to describe a student's behavior, identify factors that are associated with that behavior, and determine the reasons or purpose for that behavior. We conduct FBAs in order to develop behavior intervention plans, or BIPs. A BIP is a plan that's created for a student that includes our positive behavior strategies, interventions, and supports. They include reasonable changes to instruction, curriculum, or routines for your students. They're based on the FBA, and they reflect feedback from parents and guardians as well as what we are seeing in school. We look at their emotional, mental, and physical health, in addition to the behaviors that we are observing when we develop our behavior intervention plans. In addition, these processes for our FBAs and BIPs at FCPS are being revised to be more comprehensive so that we can reflect all of these changes to the benefit of your students. So we mentioned applied behavior analysis as a science. Its guiding philosophy is behaviorism, which attempts to improve our condition, which could be behavior change in education, our personal lives, or many other areas. And it will be most effective if behavior itself is the primary focus. And we look at changing the environment. Applied behavior analysis is the science based on using learning principles to improve lives. We focus on assessing the environmental influences on behavior. We use assessment-based interventions, and we derive all of our decision-making from the data that we are collecting. ABA has been used to address the behavioral needs of individuals in general and special education, organizational management and safety, gerontology, and many more fields. It's best known as being the leading evidence-based treatment approach for autism and other developmental disabilities. How is this going to then help your students? Well, behavior analysis has been used to improve teaching strategies and increase learning across content areas, grade levels, and student populations for more than 60 years. It provides a scientific approach to designing, implementing, and evaluating instruction based on analyzing interactions between what the teacher does and student learning. Behavioral strategies and tactics have been used to teach academics, social, vocational, and daily living skills, and to improve our entire systems of schooling. Behavioral instructional design informs curriculum development from basic academics to concept formation and problem solving. ABA will be used by FCPS to support students through the hiring of additional staff that hold a specialized credential in this field. Let's take a look at where these new staff will be and what their role is. So our staffing changes begin or continue. They began with me, but they continue with looking at our behavior support specialists that are assigned to our expressions or pyramid programs, as well as Rock Creek School. One of the changes that will be made for these positions is they will need to become board certified assistant behavior analysts for the settlement agreement. FCPS will be hiring board certified behavior analysts to exceed the standard set by the settlement and ensure that we get the best possible outcomes for your students. Until the start of the 23-24 school year, staff that are enrolled in a program will satisfy this requirement. Our goal is to hire as many BCBAs to fulfill the requirements of the settlement before that time. We want to have fully certified and credentialed BCBAs supporting your students in these programs. Additionally, these behavior support specialists will have the opportunity to obtain certification if they do not already have it. And FCPS has developed some partnerships with Mount St. Mary's University and Johns Hopkins University to aid in fulfilling this educational and certification requirement. So as we look at that, every school with an expressions or pyramid program, as well as Rock Creek School, will have at least one of these BCBAs, and the ratio of staffing will be 1 BCBA for every 20 students. This requirement does not apply to our Learning for Life students program. However, they will be able to receive support from someone like me or one of our other BCBAs when it is necessary. As we look at what these BCBAs will be doing in the classroom, they're going to be looking at all of our physical restraint forms within one school day, if that becomes necessary. They will also be collecting information on the number of restraints per student and school-wide. And they will be meeting with the staff regularly that are to ensure that the practices follow our policies and procedures. And if there are any issues, they will report their findings to myself and their school principal. Within these programs, the BCBAs will oversee the completion of our FBAs and the development of the behavior intervention plans, our BIPs. Once they start their positions in August of this year, those BIPs that are in place in these programs will be reviewed for anyone that has been physically restrained between 2017 and 2021. If necessary, they will oversee changes or conduct a new FBA. Finally, these staff will be monitoring the effectiveness of these BIPs and supporting regular progress monitoring during the IEP meetings and IEP updates. One of the additional components that I mentioned in my role is that there will be some significant training and development happening for FCPS staff. Some of these trainings have already occurred. In March of 2022, FCPS held a required training for all school administrators and any person trained to use physical restraint on the appropriate use of physical restraint, an overview of the harms of physical restraint, and FCPS's new documentation and debrief requirements. Additionally, all staff that were trained prior to the settlement agreement went through a retraining in their Crisis Prevention Institute, which is our crisis intervention program. And this training will be renewed every year. Some additional training requirements that will occur annually are listed here. These will be collaboratively developed and provided annually to staff. For all instructional staff, we will ensure that they receive training that covers federal and state laws, including the Americans with Disabilities Act, the IDEA, COMAR regulations, and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. They'll also receive information about behaviors and how to utilize ABA practices, proactive strategies to prevent the need for restraint, as well as extensive de-escalation strategies in order to minimize situations that might lead to a restraint. For staff, all staff will know the proper use of physical restraint. We will provide an overview of individualized supports that can be provided to all of our students. They'll also learn how to properly complete any documentation required for restraint or any of our practices. They will also know how to complete the complaint procedure, which we will review later in this presentation, and how to participate in a successful debriefing of an incident. Our special education teachers will receive additional training on our revised FBA process and developing and using successful BIPs. Additionally, they will learn more about writing effective behavioral goals and using instruction connected to those behavioral goals. The next item on our agenda is to review the compensatory services that are available for your students. So while we have covered some significant changes to policies, staffing, and training that FCPS is making to support students, there's still some more information that needs to be shared regarding our compensatory services. There is a variety of services available for your student, and these are extensive in their offering. So every student currently enrolled in FCPS who was secluded and/or physically restrained during the 2017, 2018 through the 2020, 2021 school years will be offered 3 months of weekly 1-hour counseling sessions with a licensed therapist to be chosen and paid for by FCPS. Additionally, every student who was secluded and/or physically restrained during the 2017, 18 through 2021 school years will be offered compensatory education for every hour the student was denied educational services while being secluded or restrained. So as we look at this next slide, we see the services that are available under that compensatory component. Parents and guardians, you, will select among the following options, which will be paid for by FCPS. You can receive additional instruction or tutoring through distance learning outside of school hours. You may select instruction or tutoring provided in person outside of school hours. You may select summer school or other education programs outside of school hours, additional therapy sessions, or another form of compensatory education chosen by FCPS in discussion with the parent and guardian and approved by the United States. In a moment, we will review the updated compensatory services survey, which allows you to identify which of these services you would like and how you would like to receive them. Our next two slides provide some additional information regarding what these services will look like for your student as you consider the available options. For compensatory education that is tutoring, who could provide these services? It may be FCPS certificated special education teachers and/or related services providers. A list of outside providers approved through the FCPS procurement process, or another outside provider that currently works with the student and is willing to adhere to FCPS procurement process for payment. These options may be provided in areas related to the current IEP goals and objectives. We can work on one or more specific areas, such as reading and/or math. We will work with you as the parent and the student to address current learning needs, and these may occur virtually or in person. The compensatory services for therapy would also be provided by an FCPS licensed therapist with the agreement of you as the parent. That could be an LSSW, a clinical social worker, or an LCPC, a professional counselor. There are a number of outside therapists that are already approved through the FCPS procurement process that you may select from, or another outside therapist that currently works with your student and is willing to adhere to FCPS procurement process for their payment. These therapies may be based on current social emotional learning goals in the IEP. We may collaborate with current FCPS providers, such as our LCSWs or LCPCs, to address therapeutic needs. We'll work with a parent and student to address their current therapeutic needs, and these services may be provided virtually or in person. So how can you request these services? We would like to encourage you to complete the updated compensatory services survey and that is the next item that we will discuss. So there are 4 sections to the compensatory services survey. The first section is information about your student or your child and your contact information. Once you have entered the required information, which includes the name and school of your child, as well as your name, first and last, email, and phone number, you may continue to the next section. If you do not have an email address, please enter NA or none in the email field in order to proceed to the next section. The second section of the compensatory services survey goes through those same items that we just outlined regarding what your options are related to tutoring, extra sessions outside of their regular school year, such as summer school, or additional, or additional programs outside of school hours, additional therapy. You may request an IEP meeting to discuss your options. You may also select another form of compensatory education. If you check that box, the text box that is below must have some information entered into it before you can continue to the next slide. If you choose not to accept any services, you may select none of the above. If you select none of the above, we would like to know why you made that selection. If you made a different selection on the previous section, you will not see these options and you will skip to the final section. As part of our goal of continuous improvement at FCPS, we would like to know from these reasons why you did not elect for compensatory services that are being offered. We value the information that you provide in response to this question, as it aids us in identifying areas that we are doing well, as well as areas where we can improve or develop better supports and programs for our students and families. On this slide, you can see that the choices are: I do not have enough information to accept this offer. I do not feel comfortable with FCPS providing these services. It may be that my child is already receiving tutoring services. My child is already enrolled in summer school. My child is already receiving therapy. I do not think my child needs compensatory education or services, or my child needs other types of services. If you select that last option, something must be entered into that final text box in order to proceed. Once you have answered this question, you may click next and it will take you to the final section. In the final section, you can provide any comment or additional information you would like to help guide the provision of your compensatory services or in the services that your child will receive. Once you enter this information and you click next, the answers will be submitted to FCPS and we will review them and look for a service provider that meets your needs so that you can be set up with the services that you have selected. Finally, tonight, we want to review the complaint process. FCPS is committed to systemic changes for the betterment of our students. The safety and well-being of our students and staff are of the highest priority to the school system, and you have rights to make us aware so we can be more responsive. The updated complaint process for restraint or seclusion was developed with the Department of Justice to ensure that FCPS quickly responds to all complaints about the use of physical restraint. As a reminder, seclusion is prohibited by FCPS and Maryland law. However, if you have a concern that seclusion may have occurred, please use this process as well. These complaints can be spoken or in writing by any student, parent, guardian, staff member, or other person. Determinations regarding all complaints will be made within 60 calendar days. FCPS will take all appropriate actions to fix problems in response to each complaint. FCPS will provide a written explanation of the resolution to everyone involved, and FCPS will not allow any retaliation, harassment, or negative educational consequence against any person or their family member who makes a complaint or participates in the complaint process. The complaint process is referred directly to me, regardless of which form is used to make the complaint. This does not stay at the school level if that is where you make your complaint. So let's look at how you may submit these complaints. One, you may submit a hard copy and these will be available in every school building in the front office. There will be a locked drop box that you can put this form in, and these completed forms will be sent directly to me. Digital form submission via this link is an option, and we will cover how to complete that form in a moment. You may also take one of those hard copy forms, fill it out, and you could email it to me at bcba@fcps.org. Those forms may also be mailed to the Office of Special Education Supervisor or Behavior Analyst for Frederick County Public Schools, or you may call myself or the ombuds for FCPS at the numbers listed there. And these numbers will also be at the end of the presentation. If you choose to use the electronic form to submit a complaint at the link on this slide, the first thing you will see is an explanation of what this form is, and it covers that same information regarding that retaliation, harassment, or negative educational consequences is prohibited. It also informs you that it will be coming to me and I will be in contact with you if you choose to provide contact information. This form may be submitted anonymously. The second part you will see is contact information. This contact information is optional, and you may leave it blank for your name, email, or phone number. If you do use this slide to enter your name, email, or phone number, that is the information that we will use to contact you. Okay. The final part of the complaint form does have two required components: the location of the incident, which will tell us which school to investigate, and a brief description of the incident, so I have good questions to ask when I look into the incident. Okay. You may provide a brief description. As we can see, the maximum of 5,000 characters. You may also add additional comments. That box is optional, or if you have any other documentation to upload, you may upload those as well here, but that is optional. As we finish reviewing the complaint process, FCPS would like to emphasize that if you make a complaint using this process for any reason, retaliation, harassment, or negative educational consequences is strictly prohibited against any complainant or any member of their family for filing a complaint or otherwise participating in the complaint process. Contact information for myself or the Office of Special Education for support in your compensatory services offer is available here. And as a reminder, you can contact me directly at this phone number if there is an issue with it or a complaint that you would like to make orally. This slide contains links to the updated survey, as well as an overview of the full settlement agreement with the Department of Justice. I want to remind you that FCPS will be happy to help you complete the survey, and please use that contact information on the previous slide if you would like to request this additional support. At this time, we'd like to try to answer your questions, so I encourage Dr. Chambers or Mr. Keller to jump in here with any questions that they've been monitoring, and we can try to answer for you.
Thank you. We've been receiving some direct questions messaged to myself and Mr. Keller regarding things that we are putting in a frequently asked question document. But we are happy to navigate discussing any of those questions with you now. One of the questions was related to, are the board certified behavior analysts required at non-public institutions? So we just wanted to share with everyone that the BCBA staffing changes are specific to FCPS property, specific to the pyramid programs, the expressions programs, and Rock Creek School. So no, there will not be staffing requirements in our non-public institutions. However, many of our non-public institutions do have board certified behavior analysts on staff.
Another question that we received tonight is, what are the biggest differences between a BCBA and a BCABA? And so board certified assistant behavior analysts are bachelor levels individuals. They've received a bachelor's degree and they still require supervision by a BCBA, while a BCBA has completed graduate level work and received a master's degree and completed the appropriate credentials through the board, the BACB. and they do not require supervision.
Another question we've received is, are caregivers or family members eligible for services related to the trauma experienced by their students? So at this current time, the parameters of the agreement are specific to your children. So those compensatory services are specific only to your children.
Another question that we received tonight is, what is the ombuds? And so for those that are not familiar with the ombuds, that is a neutral person that has been designated by our Board of Education to informally help provide options for families to seek a resolution to address any FCPS concerns that you may have. On our frequently asked questions, we will make sure that you have access to the Ombuds website, and I'll put it in the chat box as well if you have more questions regarding the Ombuds, Office of Ombuds.
So we had another clarifying question asking if the one BCBA per 20 students applies to the whole district. So one board certified behavior analyst per every 20 students in pyramid program, one per every 20 students in expressions program, and one per every 20 students at Rock Creek. Only in the Rock Creek School and any elementary, middle, or high that houses an expressions program or a pyramid program, the BCBAs are assigned to every 20 students in those programs. It is not the entire district of Frederick County Public Schools. We also have a question about what other educational related services are for, other educational services for compensatory services are. So perhaps if it is not an educational service or tutoring or trauma therapy and therapeutic services, it may be something similar to something the parent feels would be more appropriate. For example, it might be a summer camp or during the school year camp event. So those are any services that once we begin to have a conversation about the compensatory services, and as a family, you are selecting an other educational service on your survey, it is based on our conversations with you and your feelings that perhaps the therapeutic supports or the educational tutoring supports are not the supports that may help. However, you may have a connection with a camp or other educational services that you would like to recommend for our consideration.
One of the other questions that we received tonight is, what training will take place for staff who are not within specialized programs for students with BIPS or challenging behavior? And so any staff member that will be supporting students with BIPS moving forward, we will be rolling out a new functional behavior assessment and behavior intervention plan process. All staff that support that process, including special education teachers, will be trained on the new multifunction behavior intervention plan process in order to carry out those new evidence-based interventions. And that will happen this upcoming school year. There will be multiple trainings that staff can sign up for.
There's a question also, will the link to the updated compensatory service survey be provided to families? Absolutely. A follow-up letter is coming your way outlining this information, as well as an email that includes both the frequently asked question document, a copy of this recording, and within that email, we will house a link to the compensatory services survey.
Another question we received regarding the complaint form, and the question was, is that for new incidents that occur from this date on, or is this for incidents that occurred between 2017 to 2022? And that the purpose of the complaint form is for incidents moving forward. So from this date on, you can fill that out if necessary.
Another question in the chat is, are public charter schools included in these programs? So for our public charter schools are not pyramid programs. They are not Rock Creek and they're not Expression. So they would not have allocated board certified behavior analysts on staff. However, all of our staff is trained and required as per the agreement on proactive behavioral strategies that include finding function of behavior and de-escalation strategies. So the charter schools would be trained in that requirement.
Another question that we received tonight is, do we have to fill out the updated form if we already filled out the form in February? And no, you do not. If you have provided your answer and that is what you would like to stick with, you can maintain that current response. If you have any follow-up, you're welcome to reach out to us and complete the survey again. Another question we've received a couple of times regarding the BCBAs is that, will they help support other programs besides specialized programs? And yes, that is a part of the terms of our settlement agreement, is that we provide training to other programs throughout FCPS that help support students with disabilities. And so they will receive the necessary training that BCBAs are equipped with. An additional question we just received, are the BCBAs assigned to the programs responsible for providing the training to the paraprofessionals, or SEIAs as we call them? And yes, they will be completing training directly to our SEIAs moving forward on the use of applied behavioral analysis, as well as helping them understand appropriate data collection, as well as ways to implement the behavior intervention plan that each one of our students will have.
Matt, can you go back a slide to the contact information, please? So the presentation will also be shared with you along with the recording, but want you to see clearly here that you have contacts here in Frederick County Public Schools, Matthew, Mr. Blazik, and Troy and myself via our special education phone number and email address here that's on this screen. If you are in a position where you want to refill out the compensatory service survey, you are welcome to do that. If you are requested an IEPT meeting and it has not been scheduled, please reach out to us directly immediately so that we can help facilitate and expedite the scheduling of that IEPT meeting. We are available for you to help support your next steps in this process. We are committed to improving and helping your children get the services and supports they require as a part of the agreement, as a part of their experience, so that we can rebuild our respect and dignity together forward and support your children. So just wanted to make sure that you had this contact information, that you reach out directly, because we will help to facilitate both the work to implement your compensatory services, but also to schedule an IEP meeting and expedite that for you. All right, so we have an additional question in the chat that we're going to place on our FAQ, but we wanted to share with you, thank you so much for taking the time to be here this evening. Again, we are working to publish the frequently asked questions document. If your answer or your question did not get answered immediately as a part of this chat, you will see the answer on the frequently asked question document. Thank you so much for being here. Within 3 days, we will send the recording back out, as well as the link to the survey, the presentation, and by all means, please do not hesitate to contact us. This also recording will be posted on our website at www.fcps.org. Thank you so much for taking time out of your summer evening to join us. We appreciate you being here. And please make sure, we are really grateful to have Matt on staff, and we are grateful to move forward to make sure our services are implemented as a result of the agreement. We hope you have a wonderful evening.